All right, let's get into the Week 6 action. No Thursday night football to discuss. There were some rumblings about COVID in Atlanta this morning with Atlanta and the Vikings. As of now, though, it seems like the game should be on, so we'll discuss that as well. Let's start with
the Vikings are like taking it from they're getting the collateral damage from a bunch of different COVID scares. Tennessee first, just after they played the Vikings, was their giant breakout, and now the team they were supposed to play, Atlanta, has a potential breakout, or at least certainly a first guy testing positive.
Watch out, Minnesota. Just watch out. Let's get into the biggest games of the week, starting with the Kansas City Chiefs at the Buffalo Bills. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, although it's lost a little bit of its luster since a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, here's the deal. I always talk about the NFC and their depth, and it's so tough to win in the NFC. Look at the AFC right now, because Buffalo's at 4-1, and Tennessee's undefeated. Steelers are undefeated.
It's kind of swung this year.
Yeah, and you still feel like the Chiefs and the Ravens are at a different level, but they haven't played at a different level this year, right? And then, New England's still lurking around. The Raiders are winning games. I mean, there's a lot going on in the AFC. So I don't think it's lost luster. I know it's not undefeated versus undefeated, but it's because Buffalo lost to a good Tennessee team the other night.
Yeah, but a week ago, both these teams, well, Chiefs lesser, but both these teams looked, fairly, not invincible, but there wasn't an obvious sort of flaw, and they hadn't shown weakness in a major way. Like Kansas City hadn't played that well, but the story was, despite not playing well, they're racking up 30 points a game and looking near unbeatable, right? Buffalo, legitimately hadn't played badly yet. And Josh Allen was playing fantastically to the point where one of us signed an apology form. Other one didn't.
I'm just saying, since the apology, we have a 60. Since I ripped up the apology, he's in the 60s from a grading standpoint. The stats aren't great. He had an unlucky interception in there, but he also should have had another one. It was old Josh Allen the other night.
I think what was kind of funny about that is that Jay Feely in the booth was doing backflips to excuse the interception against, was it Miami? The one where he contested catch and they gave it to the interception guy. Whereas in the actual game you were commenting on, you threw a ball that hit a guy in the hands and ended up as a pick. that seems like one you could have easily explained beyond going, well, a couple of weeks ago he had a pick that wasn't really his fault. Anyway,
he had other passes that should have. Either way,
I'm just saying that it's
Allen's still dangerous.
It's still a really intriguing matchup, but it's slightly less fancy than two phenomenal teams, both of which look. It's a potential AFC Championship game preview. It still is, but now there's actual signs of weakness from both these teams, and I'm kind of curious to see now if each team sort of tries to take what the learnings were from the bad games, right? The Raiders did a very concerted effort game plan wise to slow down Mahomes and the Chiefs. Do Buffalo try and adopt that game plan lock, stock, and barrel, or do they just try and play their game and hope that it's good enough? And then it's kind of similar thing on the other side. Do the Chiefs basically try and adopt what the Titans were able to do to Josh Allen?
Yeah, and I think both of it was zone defense related.
Yeah.
From a slow-down Mahomes standpoint, the Raiders did a pretty good job of mixing up their coverages, rolling their safeties, and making Mahomes play a patient game. And I would say that's the same thing Tennessee did with Josh Allen. They made him play a patient game. And, he played okay, but there were a couple mistakes in there. Misread of cover 2, throw the ball right to Malcolm Butler. He should have had another pretty bad pick with a middle linebacker lurking over the middle. But he also made some throws. But the patience aspect, we're going to talk about this later. By the way, we have Will Brinson on later from CBS Sports. Yes. And he brings this up. So I'll repeat some of the stuff that we interviewed him yesterday that we said. We talked about this, zone defense concept and making these explosive, big play quarterbacks play a patient game. I just want to discuss Mahomes for a second here, because it was such an incredible game that he played on Sunday. Just incredible as in unique. It was the highest grade we've given since 2013 for a player that had 6 big-time throws and 4 turnover-worthy plays in one game. So you've got this crazy level of volatility, some disastrous passes in there that didn't even come back to bite a ton for Mahomes, 1 interception, and then 6 ridiculous big-time throws, including the 65-yarder in the air in stride that didn't count, a cross-body 25-yarder that was dropped. I mean, just ridiculous throws from Mahomes on the good end, some bad ones, but he also was inviting pressure left and right, and he wasn't taking the easy stuff. I wrote about it this week. That was Texas Tech Mahomes. That was Texas Tech Mahomes. It was still more good than bad. He graded pretty well, but I'm curious about that. Does he get back to playing within structure a little bit more against the Bills here? And the Bills are going to try to make him be patient and take the easy stuff, right?
That's I'm usually not big on this idea of like there's a blueprint set out by a team that wins. But I do think that the Raiders showed a specific design game plan that worked. And that, I mean, if that isn't a blueprint, I don't know what it is, right? Like that is fundamentally, that's an actual game plan tailored to this guy that worked. And it's different to the one. So a lot of the times teams use that when like the Patriots do something, right? It's like, well, that's the blueprint to beat this team. All you need is an all-pro cornerback, a bunch of other, and the greatest coach of all time. Done, right? So it's
you need is a 4-man rush and great coverage.
Right.
That's it.
It's like it's not something you can replicate. But the Raiders don't have particularly good defenders. Like there's nobody on that defense that you're like, oh, God, we can't execute this game plan because we don't have this guy. Like they just had a specific schematic plan that caused problems for Mahomes and sort of caused him a little bit like Baker Mayfield to lean into his negative tendencies anyway, right? It's not like they found something that wasn't there before. We know Mahomes can play like this. They just found a way to get to sort of tease him into leaning into those negatives. And he did. Took the bait and played like that. So I'm curious to see if the Bills can do that. Their big problem is so many guys banged up in that secondary.
Right.
That was their problem against Tennessee. You know, we're used to Tre'Davious White and Levi Wallace, and they were reduced to sort of Josh Norman and guys that just, other than getting stiff armed to the ground, like guys that generally aren't at that level.
Someone corrected me because I post the big time throw of the week every week, and they were like, actually, this Derrick Henry throw was the best throw of the week.
Fair
and
point.
It was tough to argue that his throw of Josh Norman.
Josh Norman, by the way, was also getting screwed by weird defensive pass interference penalties. Like he got one on A.J. Brown. There was just good coverage.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. Buffalo, we always talk about defense and how it's really tough to predict. Buffalo, for 3 straight years, were kind of bucking that trend. Since Sean McDermott took over in 2017, top 10 coverage unit year after year after year. This year, yeah, they had injuries last week, but that has been in line with how they've played this year. They are not one of the best defenses in the league so far, right? They've been playing in shootouts. They're in the middle of the pack as far as straight up coverage grade goes. Their defense grade is in the bottom half of the league. We haven't seen that for the Bills. They got run over early Sean McDermott years, but then they just got better and better and better. So I think they're still capable when they're healthy, but this looks like another shootout, right? Chiefs and Bills, and the offense is dictating the action.
Yeah, and for Josh Allen, it's a chance to see if he does bounce back or if we just caught 4 games of like crazy high-end play. You know, the thing that you were saying, I'm not ready yet. I'm not going to crown him. We're going to wait and see. Apology form torn up.
Yeah.
We get to see now, okay, at least for a week, you were right. He went back in the tank or went back to being more like the old Josh Allen, right? Which is there's still some crazy plays in there. Like he made a couple of plays in that game where you were like, wow, that's impressive. But this was more in line with the previous Josh Allen in terms of some routine misses, some bad mistakes that he hadn't made as much of.
Even there were a few drops in there, and they were beyond the line of scrimmage, but there were plays in there where it was back shoulder instead of front. It was just the accuracy didn't help.
Yes, there was some bad ball location stuff in there that hasn't really been there for most of the season so far. So this is a chance for him to show that, okay, that was just a blip. Bad game, caught lightning in a bottle, weird game that had been moved around, whatever. Now he gets a chance to bounce back.
Where do you stand on the Chiefs right now and this idea that, hey, they looked like they were the best team in the league. We thought they were. There's enough previous evidence that they should be. And their defense was playing pretty well. They get smoked last week by the Raiders. The Ravens game, they were fantastic across the board.
Yep.
But they've played one really good complete game, and every other game they've played has been, they actually didn't dominate the Texans early on. They went to overtime with the Chargers. This game against the Bills, the New England game, they couldn't move the ball hardly, like they normally do. What do you make of the Chiefs at this point?
To me, I tend to side on the idea that that's a good thing, not a bad thing, that they've been stumbling their way through the season and still looking fairly imperious. You know what I mean? Like they're winning games when you've got a Mahomes and an Andy Reid and all those weapons, you can be so off your game and still win. It's ridiculous, right? And even like cast your mind back to last year. The Ravens were the juggernaut in the NFL.
Right.
Like they swept through the regular season, looked like the team that was going to stomp everybody on their way through to the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson was the MVP. Mahomes and the Chiefs, obviously Mahomes missed some time, didn't play that well for a lot of the other periods either side of the injury, largely are hampered by the injuries. And then you get to the playoffs and they're buried in like every game. Like they're down double digits every single game, and that just puts them like in their comfort zone. It's like, oh, well, now all the pressure's off. Let's cook. And they, that's when they let rip, and you just can't stop that high octane passing offense when they have nothing to lose, when they're playing with all 4 downs, and you have 4 shots to pick up 10 yards. That offense is basically unstoppable. And that's what we saw. But I think because it ended the way it did and they win the Super Bowl, we almost sort of revise history and like, well, they're just unbeatable. They're so good every down across the board. There's no way of stopping it. So
they were 8 minutes away from losing the Super Bowl.
Right.
So it's not invincibility.
And, every game they were buried, right? So when you look at them now and it's like, well, they're stumbling here and they didn't look that great here. It's like, yeah, but this is not different the way it's been before. It's just that the whole point about them is that they are so explosive that even when they suck, you're only 2 minutes away from them putting up 20 points and changing the outcome of what's happening. Now, against the Raiders, that didn't happen, right? They got the 1 score and then they couldn't stop Las Vegas from grinding out the clock, and they didn't get a second shot at it. I genuinely believe that if they'd stopped them there, gotten the ball back, I think the Chiefs would have won. I think they'd have gone down the length of the field and scored. But so much of the end of the games now is whether you get that next possession. And they just didn't get the next possession. But I think fundamentally, we are still talking about one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL and one of the best.
All right, so we've got a 3.5 point spread. Kansas City favored at Buffalo as of now. It's 3.5. I'm fascinated to see what Kansas City's defense does to adjust. They gave up 219 yards on deep passes last week. Spags, defensive coordinator, loves to take away the middle of the field. If he does that again, will there be some of those opportunities over the top? If John Brown is healthy, that changes Buffalo's
huge
offense as well. So a lot of it's going to come down to health. Who's actually out there for Buffalo? I do like Kansas City in this one too, and I'm counting on Spags bouncing back and having a good game plan. He's a good week-to-week game planner, having a good one for Allen.
I think John Brown is huge in this game. He's the sort of designated deep threat for this offense. It's not that they don't have, It didn't happen. Anyway,
It was a fake sneeze.
It was almost sneezed.
Can we cut? No, don't cut that. Keep that in.
Tyler, can you stitch that out? You're good. Yeah, man. Anyway, so he's like the designated deep threat for this offense. And it's not that they don't have other players that can do that. Like Stephon Diggs was the deep threat in Minnesota, was one of the best deep threats in the past couple of years. I think Gabriel Davis can be a really good deep threat as well. It's just that we haven't really seen them adjust to that. I mean, or certainly they didn't against Tennessee, right? John Brown wasn't there. The deep threat wasn't on the field, and we didn't have a backup plan. We didn't have somebody else doing that. Like they didn't replace him with Stephon Diggs or Gabriel Davis. They just didn't have that in the arsenal. And I think they need that in the arsenal against a team like the Chiefs. So if John Brown isn't playing again, they need to figure out, like, well, who's going to replace that role in this system, because that's a pretty important part of this.
Who are you taking in this?
I don't know. Who am I taking? Kansas City.
I'll also take Kansas City in this one.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.